start by refactoring this file to move these styles that we defined inline with our HTML to their own styles file. So I'm going to create a new file in my project directory. It's going to be called style.css, and then I'm going to take everything I defined right here and move it into that file. Then I'm going to remove the old style tag and then add a link tag. In VS Code, I have the option of specifying one of these suggestions. The CSS suggestion should do it. It gives you a relative style sheet, so it knows it's looking at a style sheet, and then an href, which is pointing at the style.css file in our directory. This is actually just a coincidence. Usually we could name the CSS file whatever we want, and then we'd have to rename it right here. But given that, let's see if it works. So I refresh the page and everything seems to be working just fine. Now let's see what would happen if I wanted to create another number in these cards. In playing cards, you usually have a number on the top left and then the lower right, and then the suit that it is and whatever color it is. Let's see if we can recreate that. So let's see what happens if I add 2 ones right here. When I refreshed, I get just 2 ones next to each other. So it looks like it wouldn't be that easy. We're going to have to do some more work with classes. So I have 2 numbers stacked on top of each other. How am I going to get this second number to be on the bottom right corner like we see on playing cards? Well, I think that I can take these 2 child diffs of this card tag and then space them out perfectly from top to bottom using flexbox. And then once I've done that, I should be able to take this lower div on its own and just put it to the right. Let's give it a class property of right, just so I remember to do that. So now back in the style sheet, I'm going to add display flex to turn this card into a flex container. With that, the default flex direction, the main axis, usually points from left to right. So if I refresh this page, I'll see the ones going left to right. What I want to do is I want it to go top to bottom, so I'm going to change the direction from row to column. So now they're going top to bottom, but you see they're still floating to the top. What I want to do instead is I want to have the content to be justified by space between. Space between allows us to space the numbers as far apart from each other as possible. If there were 3 divs, you'd have one perfectly in the middle, so it would just take up as much space between each of the elements. Well, that's good, but we added that right class, so let's define it right here so it gets used. So for the right class, I'm going to give it a text align property of right, and text align, and then refresh my page, and look at that, we have the numbers stacked on top of each other. That's not so bad, but you know, when I look at this HTML page, I see that we have a div of a card, and then we have 2 numbers, one of which has a class right, one of which is just a blank div. And then I'd have to copy this and put these numbers in for each of these. What about 6 through 10? What about jacks, queens, kings, and diamonds? And, well, I guess that's a suit, but you see my point. There is a lot of work that we'd have to do if we wanted to define everything in HTML. While on one hand, I could just do this. This would get really tiresome. There has to be some kind of better way to put all these cards on the page rather than, copy and pasting. Some way to do this dynamically. Let's add our first JavaScript in the next video. See you there.